Welcome once again. In our next news, no fewer than 50 tough and hardened terrorist commanders have been taken out by the military in Nigeria's northwest and northeast regions in the last 1 year. Now, this is because the military declared high-profile terrorist commanders, including Simon Ekpa, the notorious leader of the proscribed Indigenous People of Biafra, wanted over their nefarious activities.
The Chief of Army Staff Taoreed Lagbaja on Tuesday in Abuja at the opening of the first quarter Chief of Army Staff Conference 2024 says the Army has made progress in stabilizing the nation's security despite a few obvious challenges. The North has witnessed mass cases of kidnappings, insurgency, and an increase in the number of maimed persons. Insecurity has all of a sudden reared its ugly face in the Southeast as well. Now, to look at the Nigerian military, the success rate so far, what other adjustments need to be done, we're joined this morning by Chidi Omeje. He's the editor, Security Digest. Good morning, Mr. Omeje. Thank you very much for joining us. This morning, we'd like to look at... Yes, thank you very much for joining us. Let's look at the Nigerian military and, the journey so far. They've been, some would say, overburdened with not just protecting our territorial integrity, from external influences. It should be maybe from external influences, but what we're seeing now is they've been overburdened with the chaos that has been happening within the country, in different parts of the country. So how would you say the Nigerian military has fared so far?
Okay, it's very clear for everybody to see that Nigerian military has in the past, say about 2 decades or thereabouts, or less than 2 decades, shown exceptional, commitment that is actually beyond what we expected. Look, ordinarily, the Nigerian military was supposed to be what we call the last line of defense in internal security operations, meaning that it is actually the civil police that ought to be the lead agency in dealing with internal security challenges. That it is only when the challenge is beyond the capacity of the civil police that the military is involved, is called to assist the police, and when they stabilize the situation, they move on and the police will hold the place. But what is happening right now for the past a decade is that the military has, from that their last line of defense, have become the first line of defense, become, the lead agency in every queue of internal security challenge. What does this mean? It means that the military no longer deals with that particular job of defending the country from external aggression and probably internal insurrection. They are now dealing with the whole gamut of internal security challenges. So that is why they are deployed in the northeast for terrorism. They are deployed in the northwest and north central for banditry, for mass kidnapping, for farmers' headers clashes. They are deployed in the southeast for the secessionist agitators. They are deployed in the southwest to deal with the bohos of this world. They are deployed in the south for to defend, to watch over the country's maritime assets. So they are deployed in fact, as we are talking right now, the Nigerian military is deployed in every state of the federation. Meanwhile, we're not fighting war. You see, so they are actually overstretched, but thankfully not overwhelmed. I keep using that word. They are overstretched, but they're not overwhelmed. So I will give them kudos. I will say that they've done a lot, and I expect the country to actually think about reformat our internal security operations mechanism, such that the various agencies in the country, various security agencies in the country should be able to know, their own particular role, so that will not give, outsource everything to the military. That way, you'll be robbing them of their professionalism. That way, you make them to internalize some of these civil foibles that rub off negatively their professionalism. So you see, much as we appreciate their efforts, we must bear in mind that it's not the best thing to do when we outsource the entire internal security issue to the military. Yeah. So the military have done well, but we better watch it so that we not overwhelm them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty much the same picture, at least for the last 10 years. They've been overstretched, constantly for at least the last 10 years. They've lost, countless, number of military personnel, through terrorist activities and the likes. But I also want your thoughts on the current story about these terrorist commanders that have been eliminated by the military. How well would you say that we are doing in the fight against insurgency? Do you think that we're winning against the groups like ISWAP and Boko Haram and every other group that has held the northern part of Nigeria for a long time?
Now, first of all, the network is playing up. I just got a bit of what to say, but you're asking me if what I think about like the military's effort in battling insurgency and terrorism, right?
Yeah, with the killing of these commanders, according to the news stories.
I beg your pardon?
With the killing of these commanders, these terrorist commanders, yes.
Sure. I mean, the killing of those commanders you mentioned are becoming a routine. Every now and then we hear that, we see their pictures being decimated, and that goes to show that actually the military is doing their best. Let me tell you something about terrorism and insurgency. It's not something you can, snap out in a jiffy. It's not something you can, it's ideologically based. So every now and then there's large flow of conscription from those guys. So the military, if not for the effort of the military, by now, I don't know how the country will look like. Maybe we'll have been the next after Somalia or Afghanistan. But for the effort of the military, this is not happening. So I appreciate the fact that, they've not been able to totally stamp them out. It's not possible. The only time I think we have the world witnessed eventual stamping out of terrorism is in, I remember the place, but what I'm trying to say is that it's not easy. It's not something you can actually stop at the point. But they are doing all they could, and the result was seen. The decimation of some of these commanders from the northeast and even up to Zamfara and Katsina and Kaduna. Where we've seen commanders being taken out. It's just part of the effort they're doing, and I want to say that we can even get the better of them if there are much more robust collaboration between and among these security agencies, because the issues that we're dealing with are stuff that you cannot deal entirely through kinetic effort. There's bound to be, support from the civilian society. There's bound to be support through collaboration with other agencies, so that the military should be able to, spread their tentacles. But right now, you don't have that much, collaboration. Even in areas where they sack the terrorist or bandit base, you find it difficult to have somebody to hold the ground because you don't have the police to do that. The same military who ought to move on to other theaters are still expected to hold down the ground. So it's not the best. But I think, back to your question, they have done well, in the whole effort against terrorism and banditry in the country. They've done exceptionally well.
Yeah, and what would you say are the next steps? Looking at the journey that we've been on so far, we're talking about eliminating commanders. I don't know what maybe you will start with sharing what the reality is. Do we still have parts of northern Nigeria being, controlled by these terror groups? Do we still have them in their hundreds or maybe even thousands, fully armed in parts of northern Nigeria? What's the reality? And then what would you say you would prescribe as the next step that the Nigerian military should be taking if we want to see a seeming end to insurgency in the next 5 years?
Yet again, the network is playing up, but I got a bit of the question. Yes, I think that there are parts of the country where we understand that the terrorists are still exerting some level of authority, but that does not mean that they have taken over, sovereign part of Nigerian sovereignty. What happens is that there are some ungoverned spaces where you can actually notice the presence of these guys there. That is what I'm talking about. That you do not have enough boot on the ground to cover the entire, spaces that you ought to cover because of the paucity of, troops on ground.
All right, we seem to have lost connection with Omeje Chidi, but we thank you very much for joining us on this conversation, and you've done a justice to the topic. We do look forward to continuing the conversation at a later date.